Hi, and welcome to another episode of SWITCHCast, a podcast delving into the world of film brought to you by the team at Switch. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Charlie David Page.
I'm Jess Benton.
I'm Daniel Lemon.
I'm Brent Davidson.
And I'm Jake Watt.
It's Thursday the 3rd of August 2017. On this week's show, the Melbourne International Film Festival kicks off today, and I'll get some great insight on what to watch when we chat to the festival's organisers.
And I throw a cat among the pigeons to ask trash or treasure when it comes to some of our most beloved films.
And as always, all our reviews and giveaways.
Let's get straight into it with Atomic Blonde, adapted from the Coldest City graphic novels. Brent went one-on-one with this action thriller, so did it knock you off your feet?
It sure did, Charlie. Set in the final days of the Cold War, Atomic Blonde is a spy thriller starring Charlize Theron and James McAvoy. I don't want to give too much away in regards to the plot, but you guys get the picture. East versus West, spy versus spy, who's a double agent, goes around in a circle, and I'm not going to tell you the answer.
There's a double agent hunting our operatives in Berlin. Your mission, find out who did this. Remember, trust no one.
You sent me into a hornet's nest. But then you knew that, didn't you?
Every frame in this movie looks like a panel in a comic book, and you know what? It's perfect because that's what this is all based on. And speaking of comic books, I'm loving this resurgence of the 80s. Give me more 99 Luft balloons. Give me more blue and pink neon. This is the stuff my dreams are honestly made of. This movie is fun and fast-paced, and the soundtrack and score is phenomenal. If you're a fan of the music, if you're a fan of the 80s, if you're a fan of a damn good spy movie, go and see Atomic Blonde. I'm giving it 4 out of 5.
Oh my god, I was so bitterly disappointed with this film. I don't understand what happened. Everything was there. It should have worked. Charlize Theron is amazing. She's
basically an action film icon already.
Yeah, everyone's going nuts about the fact that, she's 41 and she's doing all her own stunts and she's one of the few actors, even actors, forget about actresses, actors in general that do their own stunts, and they're awesome action sequences, but this film is all style, zero substance. There is no reason to care about her character. She comes in, she's she's anti-authority despite working as a spy, and she's a smart ass. You kind of sit there and go, okay, she's cool and she's funky and she's got great style and isn't this fun? It's in the 80s. But you have no reason to root for this person other than the fact that we're told to. And the story is so convoluted. Oh, I can't stand it. I don't understand what happened.
I have to admit, when I saw the trailer, I was a bit taken aback by how uninteresting it actually looked. It looked a little bit like it was a little derivative. And just kind of pulling this kind of Cold War 80s setting. I was like, yeah, but why? Is because the 80s are in fashion now because of shows like Stranger Things and all this nostalgia baiting? Well,
it's based off the graphic novel. I don't know if maybe I don't know anything about the source material. Maybe the graphic novel is set in this time, but it's just like I said, it adds to the style of it, but it
did look pretty.
There.
Yeah, very pretty.
Yeah. Oh, so pretty, just like Charlize Theron.
I feel like I need to ask the question, why is the 80s right now so in fashion? We're looking at things like Guardians of the Galaxy, the Thor Ragnarok trailer, yes. Ready Player One, yes. Stranger Things. It's all set in the 80s, and I guess it was probably the decade we were all born in, right?
Yeah.
80s, woo!
Why is it suddenly the most popular thing in the world? I don't remember a 70s resurgence.
Well, there was that period of time in the 90s and the early 2000s where there were a lot of films built around the 70s, around that kind of aesthetic.
Everything old is
Austin
new again.
Powers, Boogie Nights, even not particularly like that Michelle Williams, Kirsten Dunst film Dick about the Watergate scandal.
Oh, I love that movie.
I think the reason why the 80s is back is exactly that. Our generation, which is now the kind of building into the major force in terms of storytelling and television and film, and the one spending a lot of money on seeing these things. It's the period that we grew up in, so it's really just because it's that. We all grew up in the 80s, which honestly is a really bad excuse.
I was only in the 80s for 3 days, thank you.
If you were born at the end of the 80s, of that decade, you're not even 30 yet.
Yeah, like me. I was only in the 80s for 3 days.
Aww.
But I mean, that's the stuff that we would have watched as kids. It's the thing of why all of a sudden are we rebooting Ghostbusters? Why are we rebooting why are all these 80s properties being rebooted now? Is it because they're just long enough, or because they just think, oh, well, it's nostalgic, people have an affection for this.
No, it made money back then. Why wouldn't it make money now? Fuck you, Hollywood.
I agree. I kind of got a little bit of a John Wick feel watching the trailer, and that already put me on the wrong foot with it because I went, well, John Wick was great. I don't want to see another derivative version of that.
They're both cool films, but in very different ways. John Wick is like ice cool, while Atomic Blonde is more like funky, hip cool, sexy cool.
Atomic Blonde is in cinemas today, and you can find my full review at maketheswitch.com.au.
Also out today is The Trip to Spain, Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon's third adventure together. The pair eat their way through Spain on an epic road trip.
Would you ever do Shakespeare?
I would have liked to have played Hamlet.
Come with me on a journey of life.
Watch your head.
Olivier played him when he was 42.
Olivier was a better actor than you.
What, a different actor?
A better actor.
We should enjoy this moment in our lives. We're at the sweet spot. I am in my prime.
From acclaimed director Michael Winterbottom, these two characters joke, eat and sightsee their way across Spain, with more mouth-watering food and impersonations than you can poke a Spanish onion at.
The thing about doing more, yes, less is more.
You've met my brother Les.
Worth a watch for the banner alone, The Trip to Spain will take you on a journey packed with breathtaking scenery and brilliant humour. Track it down in cinemas from today.
Have you seen any of the other Trip films, Jake?
I've seen them.
Are they any good? Like, it sounds like a really lovely concept, but it also doesn't sound like it's a concept that could sustain itself.
I know, it's weird, but it does actually work. I mean, they are a bit same, and they pull out their classic impersonations of like who am I trying to think of? Like Michael Caine and like all the Bonds.
Robert De Niro.
Yeah, Robert De Niro and all the Bonds and stuff like that. It's almost like a comedic version of the Before trilogy, you know, the Richard Linklater films, where it's just a really engaging conversation.
That is literally the last analogy I ever expected you to make for these films.
Yeah, because like the Before trilogy, you're watching two people have a conversation for 90 minutes, 2 hours, what have you. It's the same here. But yeah, it's just really fun. It's just two guys having a chat and eating food, and it's really, really good. And it works. I don't know why. I don't know how. But you sit there and you laugh and you're engaged and you want to see it 2 more times.
It's a good combination of director and cast. Like the only film of theirs I've seen, I saw their first film, which was the adaptation of Tristram Shandy, the postmodern novel before there was postmodernism. And it is just the funniest, most charming, clever film. So yeah, maybe I should get around to watching these.
I would really like to put my hand up for doing their job for the next 2 or 3 films. I would love to get paid to go to Spain and just get filmed with my best friend, eating food, getting
Brent,
a little bit drunk.
I think you've got to be a celebrity first.
Well, can someone make that happen, please? Because I'd really like to do it.
He has his own podcast.
Once this podcast is an enormous success, people will pay us money for all of us to travel around Europe and eat food. Because Jake's been to Europe, he can tell us where we should go.
Yeah, Europe's Poland, Germany. It's all pretty good. Good for food. Plenty of beers.
That can be our version.
Plenty of things to eat.
The trip to Poland with Switch. If someone listening wants to fund this, we'd be very appreciative.
Giving will make you happy.
We can do great impressions of one another.
Also, they're really fun, and Poland is great. They're in the EU, but they don't use euros, so that's good.
Is it?
Oh, that's so annoying when you go traveling through Europe, though.
Yeah, they have a Zwotki.
Zwotki.
Yeah.
Ouvre.
3 Z's.
Great for Scrabble.
That's not a word. Yes, it is. It is the currency of Poland.
Anyway.
All right. Also in cinemas today is The Big Sick, the bittersweet true story of a couple's tumultuous beginning. Jess caught this rom-com not once, but twice. Did you really love it that much?
Oh, Charlie, you know I'm a sucker for a good romance. It's that classic Pakistani stand-up comedian meets white girl tale. Boy, Kumal, meets girl, Emily, and they fall in love. Boy and girl break up. Girl falls into a coma. Boy meets girl's parents and tries to keep everyone's head above water while he himself flails through a burgeoning comedy career and the demands of his parents and his culture.
Are you judging Pakistan's next top model?
You know how we have arranged marriage in my culture?
Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Can you imagine a world in which we end up together?
I don't know. I'm looking for Emily Gardner. She was checked in tonight.
There's an infection. We put her in a medically induced coma.
You should call her family.
This romantic comedy from Uber producer Judd Apatow is a hilarious heartwarmer with a culture clash twist. Think My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but with Pakistanis in a coma. Based on the true life tale of star Kumail Nanjiani from TV Silicon Valley and his wife Emily V. Gordon, it's also written by the pair, so there are added layers of truth and emotion which make for a very special and unique experience. The cast is perfection, but stealing the show is Holly Hunter as Emily's mother Beth. God, I've missed her from our screens. And I'm giving The Big Sick 4.5 stars.
I kind of went to see this expecting it to be like a typical, Judd Apatow, dick and fuck joke, movie, but maybe like a Seth Rogen cameo or whatever. But this really is like a stealth chick flick. It's very sensitive, surprisingly kind of well written, and like all the characters are sort of, they're nuanced. There's no real kind of, two-dimensional caricatures or whatever. Yeah, I was surprised by this movie.
Yeah, I'm going to skip past the fact that you use the term chick flick, but
What's
but
wrong
it seems
with the
to be
term
what
chick
Judd
flick?
Apatow. Shut up. So but it seems like if you look at Judd Apatow produced this film, he didn't direct it. But if you look at his last film, which was Trainwreck, which was the Amy Schumer film, again, he's got a up and coming comedian and sort of given her, a film to write, which she did. She sort of was semi-autobiographical based on her real life and about her and her dad and her sister and what have you. And it's turned into this great film. And it's the same thing with Kumail and his wife, Emily. They've got a great story. He just happens to be a comedian who's on the rise. And they've been given this great outlet to sort of get their comedy and their story out there.
You see, that's actually the problem I had with the film, was that I went, it's another biopic about another comedian. And as much as the situation of their story is really unique, and actually I agree, I was really surprised by how dramatic and how moving the film was, but I found the storyline with him being a stand-up comedian so dull. And that thing that Judd Apatow does of insisting that he fills his films with stand-up comedians, none of whom can act, and none of whom can improv. He's like, there was one point where you could have people like Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy. You could have the great stand-up comedians in the film, but we've run out of them now. So I found it tremendously uneven in that I was so invested in the relationship and in the tragedy. And particularly, like, I agree, Holly Hunter was superb, as was Ray Romano.
Yep.
But the whole stuff with him being a stand-up comedian is like, I've seen this film before. And also, I actually found it a little bit too long. Like that thing of,
it is a fraction too long. It's a fault. It's a fault with all Apatow films, is that they're just a little bit too long.
The issue I have with Judd Apatow, like when his first films first turned up, I was really excited by them. But what I found since is they've just kind of bred this indulgence and excess with the films. Like, why are they all so long? And why is it just lots of people trying to ad-lib their way through nothing? Yeah, I was really moved by it, but I also found it very frustrating.
Anyway, you can catch The Big Sick in cinemas now, and don't miss my full review at maketheswitch.com.au.
Now let's check out the upcoming films in our trailer wrap. We'll kick it off with the first look at Suburbicon, the new film directed by George Clooney, co-written by the Coen brothers, and starring Matt Damon, Julianne Moore, and Oscar Isaac.
These animals took everything from us. I have to make decisions like what's best for the family.
Nothing like this ever happened here. This is a safe place.
I could have you killed in no time. I could kill you, too.
In theory, I really enjoy George Clooney as a director. I didn't actually like his last two films. The last one in particular, Monuments Men, was freaking awful. But his partnerships with the Coen brothers are always so good. So good. I love the Coen brothers. I love every single goddamn thing they do. And this makes me really excited.
It's also just a really well-constructed trailer. Like, I know this, like, I think we've said this last week that often we don't really comment on the piece of work that the trailer is. And these days, trailers tend to be so lazy and have no kind of art to them. But I was really impressed by the rhythm of this trailer, the movement of it, and how intriguing it was. It reminded me a lot of the trailer for A Serious Man, the Coen brothers film that was about 8 years ago, that it had this great sense of tension and rhythm whilst playing up the fact that this is going to be dark as hell and very witty.
You see half the shots of Matt Damon are him covered in blood and wielding a crowbar, and it's just going to be extremely violent and darkly funny from the look of the trailer.
Yes, Matt Damon doesn't do enough comedy, and he is so funny.
While I was watching it, I couldn't tell if it was going to be funny or not. And also, did you guys say that you think this will be nominated for Oscars?
It's certainly a potential. Only, I think, because of the credentials of Clooney and the credentials of the Coen brothers. And it has Julianne Moore in it. Julianne Moore is very discerning about the films that she does most of the time. So I think that's a good sign.
Matt Damon's no stranger to the Oscars these days either. And for that matter, neither is George Clooney.
And with the time of year it's coming out as well, it kind of is very convenient. But we'll have to wait and see. It will be in Australian cinemas on the 2nd of November, so keep an eye out for it. Next up, let's have a look at the latest trailer for It.
When you're alone as a kid, the monsters see you as weaker. You don't even know they're getting closer. Till it's too late.
Here, take it.
I saw something.
The clown. Yeah, I saw him too.
Oh, every time I see anything from this film or read anything, it is giving me a very palpable sense of hope that I'm very uncomfortable with. I really did not think this was going to work. Because, I mean, it is one of my favorite books. Like, I've spoken on the podcast before. I think when we talked about the Dark Tower trailer, I talked about how much I love Stephen King. This is a mighty book. And it's had a really treacherous kind of development. I mean, it had Kerry Fukunaga on it, the director of True Detective. He was going to go straight from that into Beasts of No Nation, then straight into It. And then because of creative differences, he fell off the project, which was devastating because he would have had such an interesting view on it. But the way that Andy Muschietti, the director of this film, has been positioning it and the way he's talking about it, and I have to admit, it has a kind of classical look that I'd hoped it would. I mean, what do you think of the look of it, Jake? You're the other person of us that's actually read the book.
When I first heard about Andy Muschietti being brought on aboard to direct Stephen King's It, I just assumed he was going to be some, easily bossed around journeyman director. He only has one directorial credit, which is Mama. But from the trailers, it seems like he has like a really good grasp of what made the story work in the first place. It looks really creepy. The way they've gradually revealed the appearance of, Pennywise the Clown it's been pretty subtle. You don't really see him in the first trailer at all. And by the third trailer, he's, running around and pouncing on children. So yeah, I feel fairly good about, Muschietti so far. He seems like he's going to bring a lot to the film.
Yeah, and it's been a very, I mean, they know the selling point of the film is Pennywise, even though the creature doesn't appear as the clown for very much of the novel. And according to an interview with Muschietti, he says that the same will be in the film, that it actually, they pick up on the shape-shifting form that the creature has in the book. But it's been really interesting in the very careful way that they've placed the selling of this film, and very interesting in the way, like, I assumed the same thing, that Muschietti was being brought on to just kind of wheel it out as quickly as possible. But the way he's spoken about the film, he sounds like he's had a tremendous amount of creative freedom with it, and that the studios have kind of allowed, like, the fact that they're allowing it to have an R rating in the States, which is a pretty bold thing to do for a property which, again, has the kind of nostalgia 80s feel to it because of the Tim Curry miniseries, which never got as far as it should have. So yeah, I'm trepidatiously excited about this. And this trailer does kind of continue to give me a bit of hope.
Is trepidatiously a word?
I don't know, probably not.
And we get another Skarsgård out of it. Woo! Too many Skarsgårds is never enough.
That poor boy from Stranger Things is only going to think movies that he can get cast in.
Yeah,
in the 80s.
Apparently he was cast in this before Stranger Things, then this went on pause, and then Stranger Things happened, and they were like, oh shit. Oh, well.
But it's like almost the same thing, like a scary monster that no one can really quite understand, and him and his gang of ragtag preteens needs to fight it,
Which is because the Duffer Brothers, who created Stranger Things, originally pitched to do It as a TV series, and it was rejected, so they developed Stranger Things instead. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why I love Stranger Things. So I went, this is what I kind of wish would come out of, and hopefully will come out of the film.
Well, we don't have long to trepidatiously wait for it. It's in Australian cinemas on the 7th of September. And finally, let's have a look at the last trailer for the sequel of Flatliners.
What if we could document what happens to us after we die?
What are you talking about?
I would like you to stop my heart. You give it 1 minute, and then you bring me back.
Clear!
you see a white light? It was like a feeling of intense power.
Is there anything disturbing?
I think I'm seeing things.
This experiment needs to end right now. I did not know that the side effects would start hunting us down.
Fuck you, Flatliners. No, don't give me that sequel crap. I don't give a shit. It is exactly the same
This
film
is unnecessary.
from 1990.
No.
I don't care
It
what you say.
wasn't
It's the same
even that
movie.
good to begin
And the
with.
first
Like, it was an
movie is
average
so good.
B-grade movie.
Oh, it's a classic. It gets in there. It's so good. It gave us Kiefer and Julia as a couple temporarily. It's so good. I love it. To this day, whenever I wear a hoodie, my brother still yells at me, "Leave Kiefer alone." It's in there, people. It's ingrained. It's in history. It's in our psyche. It's so good. And you can't mess with it, especially not with that stupid bint from the Vampire Diaries. Fuck you, Flatliners. Don't mess with a good thing.
I mean, Ellen Page being in it doesn't even give you a little bit of hope. I mean, she's a bit discerning.
I may have lost a bit of faith in Ellen Page recently. I don't think she's been in that many good movies lately.
Also, that moment where you realise it's just going to descend into a shitty horror film. Like, oh, look, there's a ghost child in a car and it's going to put its hand on the window. Oh, my God. It's like, guys, we live in a world where the horror film has advanced.
No, it's the concept is that they all have to face the thing that they like fucked up in their earlier lives. Like, doesn't one of them
it's their
kill
inner
someone?
demons. It's more of a psychological kind of thing. Because they die, they see these things of inner demons from like unresolved issues from their childhood, and it.
I can't wait to see Kiefer Sutherland reprise his role as flatlining student number 3.
Bring back Julia Roberts.
Well, love it or hate it, Flatliners will be in Australian cinemas on the 28th of September. And to check out all those trailers and more, head to youtube.com/MakeTheSwitchAU.
Some sad news this week. Director, playwright, and actor Sam Shepard has passed away at the age of 73. Nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his portrayal of pilot Chuck Yeager in The Right Stuff, Shepard was also the author of 44 plays, as well as several books, including short stories, essays, and memoirs. He received the Pulitzer Prize for Drama in 1979 for his play Buried Child. Already an established name in the theatre when he began appearing in movies, his first major credited role was as the farmer in Terrence Malick's 1978 classic Days of Heaven. While remaining loyal to the stage, he wanted to star in a variety of features, including roles in Resurrection, Country, Steel Magnolias, The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, Snow Falling on Cedars, Mud, Black Hawk Down, and Cold in July, as well as a recurring role in the Netflix series Bloodline. Shepard leaves behind an immense body of work and a fistful of amazing quotes about writing, acting, love, and creativity. Most memorably, when you hit a wall of your own imagined limitations, just kick it in.
All right, now things are about to get really lively. This week, Twitter user David Gardner hurled a grenade among cinephiles, asking for suggestions of movies everyone thinks is great but you believe is trash. Some titles thrown into the fray were The Princess Bride, The Usual Suspects, and The Departed. Bitter arguments were made, enemies were created, and tears were shed, mostly mine. Our own Daniel Lamont even got into the mix with a most upsetting list. Care to shed some light on your contribution?
Look, I don't know if I'm comfortable announcing all this to the tens of listeners that we have to this podcast.
You put it on Twitter. You can give it to our
Okay, look. Yes, I saw the thing going up on Twitter, and I went, okay, well, I will admit there are 3 films. I mean, there are more than 3 films. There are 3 films in particular that I really don't like that everyone else seems to like.
And those were
Garden State, which from as far as I know, a lot of people agree with me.
Yep.
Juno,
Oh.
which is a contentious point for some people.
Contentious.
I was almost going to put Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but I decided I didn't want to get myself into any more trouble. But the big one I put was The Lion King.
You bastard.
What?
I don't like The Lion King. I've never liked The Lion King. I didn't like it back in 1995. I don't like it now.
Oh.
Like, what about it don't you like?
He doesn't like Elton John's showiness or Hans Zimmer's fantastic orchestration.
Actually, and you know that I'm very critical of Hans Zimmer. I actually think that is one of his best scores. No,
that's because he just orchestrated it. He didn't write the themes.
He never writes the fucking themes. He barely writes anything original.
Wash that mouth out.
Anyway, the reason to answer Jake's very good question, why don't I like The Lion King? It's a weird one. On a technical level, I find the characters really shallow. I don't think that Simba advances as a character at all. Rewatching it recently, I was struck by how much nothing happens. No, there's no change in him. Even when his father dies, he still basically gets everything handed to him. Even at the end when he walks back in to take Pride Rock, he just kind of gets it handed back. But the big reason as a kid was Simba was like the kids that bullied me at school. He was privileged. He was smarmy. He got away with everything. There was just something that really rubbed me up the wrong way, which was bizarre because I think like the opening few minutes of the film are stunning. I think it's beautifully animated. I think the score is great. I think the script is preposterously weak. And for a long time, I thought it was me. And so I kept going back and rewatching the film. And every time I rewatch it, I just go, nah, it's not doing anything for me.
But you know, it was like Disney's second choice at that point. They put all their effort and top writers into Pocahontas, and kept all the B writers and B animators for The Lion King, and they didn't think that The Lion King would do nearly as well. It's why they gave everything to like Elton John and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then look what they made a musical out of, and not Pocahontas.
And I also kind of like now as an adult looking back, and you all know I'm a ridiculous Disney fanatic. I kind of look at it and go, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, like the drop in quality I find quite...
But that's because it's not an Alan Menken score Once again, it's not an Alan Menken, Tim Rice situation.
See, all I'm hearing is you legitimizing my dislike. I'm very pleased with this, Brent. Thank you.
I also agree with your Garden State thing. I remember watching that being like, I don't get it. Is it just because they use a lot of the Shins in the soundtrack? Was it because Zach Braff listened to his iPod once and was like, I'm going to make a film about like a quirky romance?
Well, look, okay, so I've gone out on a limb and I've admitted that The Lion King is the film that everyone loves that I don't. I've lost, many friends have yelled at me. Many people have told me that there's something wrong with me for saying it, but I've admitted it. That was harder to admit to people than it was to come out. So
there are other things wrong with you.
There are plenty of knew that you were gay. No one knows that you're dead inside when it comes to The Lion King.
So if I've got to sit here and admit this on podcast air
on international,
it's going to be on iTunes forever. What are all of yours? What are all the films that everyone loves that you don't love? And let me judge you.
Look, I've said it once and I will say it again. I don't like Moulin Rouge.
For shame.
I feel like it's showy and it's cheap, and we get it, Baz Luhrmann. You know how to make a movie.
I feel like you just described Baz Luhrmann's aesthetic in a nutshell, and I still can't hear the problem.
Stop ramming it down my fucking throat, okay? I get it. You know how to make a film, and
but how is it different to like Strictly Ballroom?
Strictly Ballroom, there's something almost uniquely Australian about it, and Strictly Ballroom, I think, because it was based on a play, has a lot more, depth.
Does it?
There are no new steps.
Moulin Rouge, I just don't care. I like the ethnic background in Strictly Ballroom. I like the underdog story. I don't care much for anyone in Moulin Rouge. It's flashy and it's showy, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm the guy who fucking loves Eurovision, but I just don't get it with Moulin Rouge, you know? Even though, now that I think about it, there's a lot of parallels you could draw between Eurovision and Moulin Rouge.
All right, so Brent, you admitted it. It's Moulin Rouge. All right, who's next? Who's going to put themselves in the firing line?
Jake.
New guy.
Easy one. Gladiator. Ridley Scott's Gladiator.
Ironically, the same year as Moulin Rouge.
I'm with you.
Yeah, that was a bad year.
You all fully have a problem with 2000s films, 2001 films. Why Gladiator?
Yeah, I went to see the movies with my dad, and
I saw the movies with my dad.
Yeah, and my dad and I had this massive, we walked to the cinema. We both agreed that the movie sucked, and then we had a argument about why Russell Crowe was called the Spaniard, and I think that argument lasted for about 5 days.
Because isn't he from Corsica?
From memory, I saw the movie twice. I saw it again just to sort of make sure that it was as shit as I thought it was. And I think it's because he got caught in Spain, right? He was like a Roman dude, and he was like he lived in Spain.
Okay, yeah.
No, he gets caught in Gaul. The fight at the beginning, the battle at the beginning is in Gaul.
Well, see, the only thing that I ever use Gladiator for as an example of is how Hans Zimmer reuses a melody, because in that first battle you can definitely hear the Pirates of the Caribbean theme.
He also didn't write a lot of it and refused to the other person be credited for it. So that's the other thing.
That movie is like you're writing like a screenplay and stuff for a film, and then you get to a certain point where you're like, I have no idea how this gladiator is going to kill the Emperor of Rome. So how about we have the Emperor of Rome come down and fight this guy one-on-one?
But I think that might actually be part of those sort of ancient honor systems. I'm a big fantasy novel reader, and often these people who win these fights can demand one thing of the emperor, and normally it's free me or whatever, but sometimes they'll like challenge me to one-on-one combat, or at least in these fantasy novels that I read, and then they do, or they don't, and it's just that sort of thing. Maybe there is a grain of truth somewhere in that.
All right, well, we've had Moulin Rouge trashed and then Gladiator trashed. So who's next?
Wait, both Oscar-winning films, right?
Both Oscar-winning films. Both two films that I quite love. Jess, off you go.
I don't reckon mine's gonna garner such an emotional response. But it's Anchorman.
No, I agree completely.
Yeah, I don't see the appeal.
I don't like Anchorman. I don't get.
It's
that
not
movie.
funny, but it's insanely quotable.
Yeah,
the quotes are funny out of context.
But that's the funny thing. Whenever I hear people quote it, I think it's hilarious, and then I watch the movie and I'm like, "This is not funny."
Isn't that the most
so
bizarre thing about it, though?
stupid.
Like, you can be like, "Yeah, I do push-ups every damn day," and that's funny in like whatever situation. But you watch the movie and you're like, "Ugh, gross," or like people saying "I love lamp," and it's very quotable.
I'm not good. I have no judgment of you, Jess, for that one. I think it's charming, but I would never watch it again.
And I can't believe they made a second one.
They made two second ones. They did two different cuts of the same film. I had to watch both to review them, and neither were pleasant.
I wouldn't mind seeing Gladiator 2, Return of Gladiator.
There is one. I think Nick Cave actually wrote a script for Gladiator 2.
I made that up.
Yeah.
No, Jake's right. Nick Cave wrote a version, but it was so batshit nuts that they refused to do it.
Oh, I would definitely watch that, though.
But it's in heaven now.
Oh my god, and he has to fight to keep his place in heaven? I'm already writing this fantastic film in my head. Hans Zimmer returns with his score from Angels and Demons for Gladiator 2. Already. If anybody doesn't know, what Daniel just sang was an excerpt from
the theme for Angels and
Demons soundtrack.
So beautiful.
So beautiful, so angelic.
So the only person that's left is Charlie to admit, and I have a feeling because you've known me longer than the rest of these guys have, imagine you're probably going to pick something that's going to really stab my heart. So
yeah, maybe. I do have another Oscar winner that I'm going to trash in front of all of you. Do you? So I don't hate this film. I really don't, but I think it's like hideously overrated. I'm not a big fan of Forrest Gump. I don't really get it.
That film's a piece of shit. Oh, no, I'm with you. I hate that film. That is a stupid film. No. I hate it. It's so bad.
To me, that was the start of the demise of Robert Zemeckis. That was where he started, going downhill for me. I don't know.
It won Best Picture over Pulp Fiction and The Shawshank Redemption. What the fuck?
Won 6 Oscars. I don't understand how. It baffles me. And I just find it to be one of the most boring films I've ever seen.
So sentimental.
2 hours and 20 minutes. And it felt like 5 hours, honestly. Yes. I don't know. I didn't get it.
My brother we used to have this thing at home where back when I was a kid where we would alternate weeks where we could borrow videos from video stores. So of course, me being the film nut that I was even as a kid, I would always hire something new every time. My brother, every time, Forrest Gump. A week of watching Forrest Gump over and over again because he loved it and my mum loved it.
I have to admit something with that. Whenever I used to go to the video store when I was a child, I would always rent The Mask, and my mum and dad had to deal with me watching The Mask over and over again for a week.
At least it's fun and it's short.
Party, because I got a brilliant. Maybe I can blame some of my flamboyancy on that.
When I shake the maracas,
so flamboyant.
Chicky boom.
I think my flamboyancy maybe comes from a combination of the genie from Aladdin and The Mask. But more on that later.
So, I mean, there you go. You've just heard the writers from Switch trash some of your favorite films. And I hope you found some enlightenment in that. And a way to hate us.
And do you agree with us?
I also think Frozen is overrated.
Do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? What films do you like or dislike in that same sort of vein? So if you've got any movies that you can't stand but everybody else seems to love, please put them in the comments and we might actually have a look at them next week and see if we agree or not.
Today marks the beginning of the 2017 Melbourne International Film Festival. Jam-packed with offerings for everyone, it's set to be a busy few weeks in Melbourne. I caught up with Al Kosa, MIF's programmer, to uncover his must-see movies. Al, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your time.
No problem, my pleasure.
What are your highlights of the MIF 2017 program?
Yeah, well, I mean, the scale of MIF is, as it always, incredibly exciting. We're talking 358 films from 68 countries, 68 languages, so it's a hugely diverse array of, I guess, both contemporary films and films reaching right back into the history of cinema. I guess we've all got our, films that we feel very kind of personally affectionate for. One of my favorites that I'd recommend everyone to go and check out is Nothing Would by Sonia Kronlund, who's a French radio journalist making her debut documentary feature. This is a film that's only just world premiered as well. It's come pretty much straight out of Directors Fortnight in Cannes. And it's a portrait of Salim Shaheen. He's sort of known as the Ed Wood of Afghanistan. Some of the trades have referenced him as almost a bit of a, Jared Dippiger meets Steven Seagal figure in the middle of Afghani film. He's a director who is sort of, the godfather of perhaps B-movie and kind of trashy action picks made within Afghanistan. And the film follows him as he makes both his 110th and 111th features. And it's an extraordinary kind of, very joyful kind of documentary film. If you've seen something like Chris Smith's American Movie, if you can imagine that sort of transplanted to the middle of a war zone, then you're getting close here. It's hilarious. It has a fascinating, compelling kind of socio-political context to what he's doing. And it's just really, I guess, a great reminder of the joys of storytelling. That's absolutely one of my favorites. I'd highly recommend I Am Not a Witch as well, which is just, fantastic, kind of very dry but very precise kind of absurdist satire. There's a lot to love about that film. And look, something like Dinah is another documentary as well, won Grand Jury Prize at Sundance for US Doc this year. And it's about a woman who's in her 50s and suffers from Asperger's, has a variety of mental health challenges as well, and is in the lead up to getting married with her partner, and they both have a lot of kind of emotional and physical intimacy kind of issues that they're working through. And it's, again, like it's a documentary sort of that is so precise, so well framed, so much thought given to, I guess, tone and the rhythm of how it's all kind of presented and put together, that really does have that kind of precision of fiction around it. It's EP'd by Christine Vachon from Killer Films, who of course is a massive kind of name in American independent cinema, and Michael Cera actually does the music for it as well, which is a bit unexpected, but that one's a lot of fun too.
Melbourne International Film Festival 2017 also has some great world premieres too.
Yeah, look, there's a number of very significant new Australian works that are screening. So this year you've got things like The Butterfly Tree with Melissa George and Ed Oxenbould. You've got Westwind Jalu's Legacy, a doc which looks at Indigenous didgeridoo maker collaborating with Gautier. Have you seen The Listers from Eddie Martin, who your listeners may be familiar with previously with All This Mayhem? A kind of a street art character doc portrait piece of Anthony Lister and his family and marriage. We have The Songkeepers, which is a really beautiful doc about the Central Australian Aboriginal Women's Choir. And they reinterpret 14th century German Lutheran hymns into Indigenous language, and it looks at their first tour out of the country overseas, Europe. They'll also be performing in Melbourne at the MRC around the time of MIF as well. But that's a really gorgeous documentary. And there's something like Rabbit by Luke Shanahan world premiering as well. And that's a very kind of, I guess it's one of those ones you don't want to talk too much about, but it's quite mysterious, has elements of kind of gothic fairy tale to it, about an unusual bond between identical twins. And then, of course, it's also worth mentioning this opening night film, Jungle, which is new work by Greg McLean, which has Daniel Radcliffe playing Yossi Ginsberg, who survived in the Bolivian rainforest for around 3 weeks, I think, after a bit of a mishap, to say the least. It's kind of a classical adventure story, but it has these very dark kind of elements to it, working under the skin as well. But it's a really kind of compelling true life adventure film. It's worth saying that Yossi Ginsberg will actually be here, the real Yossi Ginsberg, as a guest to the festival. And he'll also be appearing as part of Miss Talks program as Jungle in Conversation, happening on Saturday, 5th August, which will feature Greg McLean, the real Yossi Ginsberg, as well as producer Dana Lustig in conversation with Sandy George.
Well, we've been through the program highlights and the world premieres, and we've only just touched the tip of the iceberg as far as MIF 2017 goes. And the only way to experience it is to get down to Melbourne and get involved. So thanks so much, Al. We really appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
So guys, the Melbourne International Film Festival is kicking off today. It's running for about 2.5 weeks. It will absolutely take over Melbourne. There are so many fantastic screenings. What I would love to hear is everyone's suggestions and recommendations and what you would like to see from the festival. So let's start with Jess.
I think everyone should go see Brigsby Bear.
Oh, yeah.
It is so original and so funny and so beautiful, and seriously, Brigsby Bear. If you haven't heard of it, you will. I think that this is going to be an indie darling that's just going to take off. Brigsby Bear.
Daniel, what about you?
I'm going to go straight for God's Own Country. It's an absolutely beautiful film. It's a queer themed film, but it kind of transcends that into being more about the concept of masculinity and affection and opening yourself up. It's set in Yorkshire on a farm about a young farmer who is incredibly repressed and built like full of self-hate, and how a Romanian immigrant who comes to work on the farm kind of opens up his heart and his possibility to be loved. So it's beautiful. I sobbed like a baby through it. I highly recommend it.
I cried too.
And in terms of what I'm excited about, is actually another queer themed film, which is Call Me By Your Name, which I get to see tomorrow, and I'm very excited. It's been one of the most highly acclaimed films of the year, full stop. And it's another queer themed film. I've avoided finding out anything about it, but all I know is everyone I've spoken to who's seen it says it's spectacular. So yeah, there you go. The gay films.
Brent, what about you?
So I discovered this film the other day, but I really want to see it, and I think you guys will too. It's called Spore or Spore.
I reviewed it for Sydney Film Festival, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. S-P-O-O-R. How do you pronounce it?
Spore. Yeah, it's like Spore. Yeah.
It's a Polish film, but with themes of crime, drama, basically environmentalism, feminism. It's kind of got everything I want to see. Poland as well. Hello. Brilliant. I'm excited by it. I'm definitely going to go and see this one. And I only discovered it because, I accidentally clicked on it and then was like, actually, you know what? I do want to see that film. So check it out, because it looks like it's going to be hard-hitting, funny, and maybe a bit emotional.
It's beautifully shot. I wouldn't say it's particularly funny. It is quite dark and it's quite twisted. But
Ooh.
yeah, it's
you know what?
Really
that makes me only want to see it more.
It's a really interesting film. It's one of the ones I was really surprised by at Sydney Film Festival.
Well, I'm going to go see it. Done.
That's Agnieszka Holland. She's like an Australian Polish director.
Is.
Yeah, she's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, some interesting work.
Feminist ecological thriller sprinkled with surreal touches, according to the MIF website.
I love it when you quote things.
I love quoting.
Jake, how about you? What have you got?
Blade of the Immortal, super violent, probably like about...
Is Blade of the Immortals the new film from the director of 13 Assassins and Harakiri, isn't it?
Yep, Takashi Miike.
Yeah.
It is like, I think it's like his 5,000th film that he's directed. He's ridiculously prolific.
Jesus.
It's not released 5. It's like it's maybe his 200th film or something like that. But like Blade of the Immortal, like a really amazing movie, pretty similar to Logan, that Wolverine movie.
Okay.
Kind of like a sort of it's almost like sort of a Japanesey sort of take on it.
I saw Harakiri a few years ago in 3D, and it was spectacular. So yeah, I that was one film I did kind of pique my interest at. So it's good to hear that it's worth the effort.
For me, at Sydney Film Festival, I loved Liberation Day. That's also showing at the Melbourne International Film Festival. I really recommend that. It's a fascinating documentary about a band called Laibach. They are really abstract and kind of very rebellious, very Soviet Union-esque. Basically, they go off to sing their interpretation of The Sound of Music in North Korea. And it is an absolutely fascinating documentary about how they managed to make that work.
That is a premise and a half.
It's
totally
spectacular. And it's hilarious. It is nail-biting. I really recommend that. One of the ones I'm really looking forward to at MIF that I haven't seen yet is The Square.
Oh, yeah.
Daniel and I will be going to see this.
The winner of the Palme d'Or.
Yes, it is. This is the director of Force Majeure, which got rave reviews. This is now getting rave reviews from all of the festivals, so I cannot wait to see this. You can catch all of our MIF reviews by going to maketheswitch.com.au now. We'll be updating them throughout the festival and adding lots of new ones.
We have a great giveaway for you this week. We have 5 Blu-ray copies of The Fate of the Furious up for grabs. The gang are back and on their biggest mission ever, with fast cars, nail-biting stunts, and big action. For your chance to win this great prize, head to maketheswitch.com.au/comps now.
So before we go, we'd like to offer some cinematic inspiration, with each of us suggesting one film that you should see this week and why in 15 seconds or less. For me, this week, it would be Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yes!
It's one of those films that I love. I have loved from the first minute that I saw this. I went into a cinema not having a clue about the concept of the film, which is... basically that Robert Downey Jr. Is playing a criminal who gets hired by a Hollywood agent and goes to Hollywood and starts to basically learn how to be a detective to appear in a movie, and then actually has to become a detective.
It's so wonderful.
It's so good.
It's awesome. It's crime. It's action. It's comedy.
It's postmodern.
It's one of it's a neo-noir, and it's one of the best performances I think that Robert Downey Jr. has done in a very long time.
And Val Kilmer, Val
Kilmer is amazing
really
in it
great.
Too. Yeah,
it was the return of both Val Kilmer and Robert Downey Jr. from what I remember. Yeah, they were sort of dead in the water, and then bam, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and they came back.
Love it, and I love the self-referential style that it has. It's breaking the fourth wall. It's all amazing. So that would be my choice for the week. Jess, what about you?
I was reading a BuzzFeed article the other day, and this was listed in one of the most underrated films ever, and I couldn't agree more. It's called The Final Girls. It's like probably like a little something you might find in your streaming sphere somewhere along the line, but I don't think it got a cinema release here.
No, it didn't. It did. It was expected it was going to, and it never ended up getting one.
Oh, it's a damn shame. But it's about a group of friends who get sucked into it like a B-grade horror film, and they realize that the only way to survive is they have to stick to the last girl who survives in the film because they're the person that killed the bad guy, and everything goes wrong, and it is absolutely hilarious. It is visually stunning. It is so original, and you're just going to love every single second of it. It's action-packed. It's so funny. It's awesome. The Final Girls. Everyone should go see it.
Hunt that one down. Let's get Daniel's pick for the week.
Well, I'm going to continue by being the art house snob like a lot of us, and this week my recommendation is a film that if you are a film buff and you haven't seen it, shame on you. It's Akira Kurosawa's Ran, his 1985 adaptation of King Lear. It's basically the story of King Lear set in medieval Japan, but the images in this film, you have to see them to believe them. There are sequences in this that defy the imagination simply by the fact that they're not in-camera tricks, that you'll literally... There's a moment, this spectacular sequence where there's a palace burning to the ground that you can't believe that they did it for real. And if you can see it on the big screen, make that your first experience. I've never seen it on the big screen, but I know friends who have, and they've said it is once in a lifetime. So Akira Kurosawa's Ran, that is my suggestion for this week.
Very cool. Brent, what about you?
Well, now that Daniel's finished ramming that down our throats, I'm going to go with...
that hurts.
The art house. I can feel it. I can taste it. Ugh. I'm going to go with a fantastic movie that everyone should see, if not only to be able to constantly quote it afterwards, but the Brady Bunch movie. The one from the 90s that has RuPaul in it, that has Ben Stiller's ex-wife in it.
Yes!
It's phenomenal. If not for the whole ensemble, it's just camp. It's wonderful. It's maybe $6 at JB Hi-Fi right now. I would recommend buying it. I would recommend watching it. It's so funny, and it's all about Jan and Marsha, and My God, they're brilliant.
Marsha.
Sure, Jan.
I have to admit, I've actually never
Oh
seen
my
it.
God, Dan,
I really need to.
You would die.
I really need to see it.
Okay, that's it. We're
but-
having a viewing night. You need to have a couple of drinks before we watch it, but it is so brilliant.
I'm up for that. I've always wanted to see it. It was one of those films that we weren't allowed to watch because I think my mum saw it first and realized that it was a piss take, not the actual Brady Bunch, and she was like, "Oh no, we'll put this on the ban
It's the Brady
list."
Bunch, but it's because it's the Brady Bunch set in the 90s, so everyone else is of the time, but they're still of when the Brady Bunch was originally sort of put out, and it's so funny and so insanely quotable. Like, I can't remember a time where I haven't used the Shaw Jan gif to one of my friends. It's
You use it to me all the time.
exactly. Every time Marsha and Jan have an interaction, it's so great. Oh no, we'll have to make new friends, but Jan, you don't have any friends. Like, oh, she's fucking brutal.
And Jake, this is your first podcast with us, so what is your very first pick of the week?
I'm going to go for one that was overlooked by the Academy Awards in 2009. It's called Universal Soldier Regeneration. It's directed by John Haynes. Starring Jean-Claude Van Damme.
You're my new favorite person.
And Dolph
You are
Lundgren.
my new favorite person.
It is seriously the best Jean-Claude Van Damme movie in the past 20 years. It's an overlooked classic.
And why do you feel it was overlooked by the Oscars, Jake?
It's just a great action movie. Well choreographed, really sort of gory action. The plot line is actually has like a really good script, and it's pretty low budget as well. Like, it's like it was released direct to video, or VOD. But for a VOD action film, it's amazing. So I actually, in all seriousness, watch this movie. If you like action movies, it's actually pretty good.
Well, they are some really diverse suggestions there. Get out there this week and watch them.
All at once,
Please.
in one day.
Yeah,
go through
tell us
all
how
of
you
it.
go.
Start a Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, move through a 3-hour Japanese epic.
Watch Brady
Sprinkle
Bunch to
in
pull
some-
yourself back.
Sprinkle in some 80s horror, and then end with an Oscar snub
snub of the
Jean-Claude Van
century.
Damme film. I think that's the best film day you could ever have.
So you can find the links to all the articles we've talked about on this week's podcast at maketheswitch.com.au. Please subscribe to SWITCHCast on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to rate us and stay in touch on Twitter. I'm at Charlie_David. Jess.
I'm at Miss Jess _Switch.
Daniel.
At Daniel Lamon.
Brent.
At Brent C. Davidson. That's the letter and not the body of water.
Brilliant. And Jake.
At Jake Chatty.
Like it, follow it. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at MakeTheSwitchAU to stay up to date with all the latest reviews, news, trailers, and giveaways.
And you can find all the notes and links to everything we've discussed on this week's podcast, as well as other episodes, by visiting switchcast.com.au.
On next week's show, I'll have my verdict on both Wind River and The Wall.
And over a decade after the release of An Inconvenient Truth, I'll review its follow-up, An Inconvenient Sequel.
Plus, I'll be checking out Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week.